Hi everyone, my name is Brittany. Welcome back to my channel. And today I'll be reading some YA dystopians.
It's Brittany, bitch.
YA dystopians are one of my favorite genres of all time. They're some of my favorite books of all time. I really love this whole genre. I love the tropes. I don't mind romances. Like, I really like that typical YA stuff, especially from like the time period of like The Hunger Games and Divergent. Like, I just will never forget some of those things. Like, I can still name every fucking Divergent faction. And I'm not gonna lie, I really still like the Divergent series, like as a whole. Like, what an interesting world. But I digress. We'll talk about it at a different time because I would eventually like to reread the entire series because I haven't reread it ever. And I read it a really long time ago, obviously. So that's still on my to-do list. If you'd like to see that, let me know down below because I would definitely prioritize that towards top of my list because it just sounds like a fun time. Anyway, let me get into the books I'll be reading for this. So I do have 3 books and I do have audiobooks for all 3 of these, which is really helpful just because during work hours I can actually listen to them, but it depends on my mood. Sometimes I listen to audiobooks for like a whole week and I don't watch any YouTube videos. I don't listen to any music. Like, I don't do anything else but listen to audiobooks. And sometimes like I just need anything but an audiobook. So just depends on my mood. One of the books I'll be talking about is Girls with Sharp Sticks. And this is a popular series by Suzanne Young. She wrote another book that I read and it is called like The Barcode something. I read this many years ago back in college and I really liked it. I think I gave it 2 or 3 stars. I liked it. If I'm saying I liked it, I'm gonna go on 3 stars. I feel like I at least liked the book enough, but it like didn't have a lot of depth for me, but I really liked the idea. Let's just hope this has a little more depth. So Girls with Sharp Sticks is basically, we're following these girls in an academy called like the Innovations Academy or something. It's kind of like a boarding school where it kind of sounds like they're raising Stepford wives. And that's just kind of the vibe I'm getting from it. I'm only 10% of the way into this. I did start the audiobook today. I just kind of wanted to get like a feel for it. And I think I'm gonna like it so far. And I'm really intrigued to see where it's gonna go. Basically, they're going to discover what's going on. We're following our main character, Philomena, and she's been at this boarding school for 8 months and she's close to graduation, but I'm very curious to see what's going to happen when they graduate. Maybe they will graduate, maybe they won't, but there's definitely some dark things going on and it's very weird already. It's very misogynistic. So if that's a trigger for you, yeah, it's a little rough because these girls are meant to grow up and be pretty, and that's like the most important thing is they're beautiful. And the one part I just passed over, they literally stopped class because a girl looked like shit and made her like go back to the dorm and like look nice and come back. So very interesting premise. Excited to see where it's going to go. The other book is Want by Cindy Pond. So in this book, we are following our main character, who I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but his name is Jason. And they live like in a future Taipei. And it sounds really interesting. This is very like sci-fi young adult dystopian where they live in a world where the upper class people get to wear like kind of like spacesuits where they have like clean air and stuff. And the people that can't afford it and are lesser than, they don't get that luxury. And apparently the air is very toxic and it's full of pollutants. And I think later on they find out that like the city is making that happen. So I'm really interested to find out what happens more with this. It seems like a really cool like young adult sci-fi dystopian crossover. And I just love those kind of things. It reminds me a little bit of Legend. I don't know if you guys have read that. I only read the first like half the first chapter, so I'm nowhere near anywhere into this. But so far I really like the vibes. So May is without and Yo is to have. So if somebody's like a Yo girl, that means like they're really rich and they're privileged and they're basically like genetically engineered is kind of what I got from this half the first chapter. So they're like perfectly made that way. I'm not sure if this is like a Brave New World situation where like there's the people who are created and then there's people who are like born as being seen as like bad, like natural birth instead of like in a test tube or something. I'm not 100% sure yet. We're nowhere near that, but that's basically what it is. So that's referred to a lot already in the first chapter that somebody's a May or a Yo. And that's just really interesting. And I'm really glad they put that right here because otherwise you would have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. That's really helpful, but there is a little bit within the chapter as well. I'm really excited to get to this one just because I'm really feeling this vibe right now. So if I'm feeling it, I'm just going to do it because half the time I pick out a fucking book and it arrives and then I don't want to read it anymore. So if I'm really feeling it, I'm just going to go forward. And the last book, Shatter Me, which is the bane of my fucking existence at the moment because I'm actually already 45% of the way into this fucking book and I don't think it's going well and I really want to DNF it. I actually started this book like a week ago just because like this is the book I have to return this actual book to the library tomorrow and I just wanted to kind of like get a head start on it or finish it already, but like I just don't know if I'm gonna like this book at all. And this we're following Juliet and she's basically locked in a prison she's basically like Rogue from the X-Men. So if she touches somebody, they can like die. There's like zero world building in this. Like I don't know what the fuck is going on. Basically the reestablishment took over the world or the US or whatever they live in, and they try to make things better after the world was kind of collapsing, climate change took over, like nothing grows anymore, all the animals are dying, etc. And they took over to make everything better, but of course making everything worse, and they're like a military power. So interesting. And they basically had her locked away, like her parents basically had her locked away after she accidentally killed a little kid by touching the little kid, because she didn't realize, like, it felt really good touching the kid, so she was like, oh, like maybe my power is gone, but she ended up killing this little like toddler. Anyway, I'm not mad about that. I don't mind the setup of this story. I really hate the writing in this. The writing is fucking atrocious. Like, the similes and metaphors are so extra to the fact where, like, I just feel like, no, I can't even describe how upset I am at, like, the similes and metaphors. I just don't understand why they were included, because they make the story so painfully YA, but also, like, just bad. Like, just bad. But anyway, there's a love story in here because Adam comes along and she's basically given a cellmate who is Adam, and surprise, Adam can touch her, which is weird. We don't really know why he can touch her and not get hurt. So he's immune to her power, and of course, after her being in a prison, I think for like the last 8 months or so, it's like a good amount of time that she's been in this really weird prison-ish, like, it's like an asylum, but it's basically like a prison asylum, and it was honestly really terrifying. It gave me like the Platform vibes. Like, I don't know if you've seen that Netflix show, but it was very interesting, and I really liked the beginning of this, except for the writing, which just got way worse after she met him, because every time she describes him or talking about him, Adam is part of like the military power, and they want to use her powers for something she doesn't know. That's all we know. I just wanted to show you that this whole like crossing out thing is really like throughout this whole book, and it's done intentionally apparently. I mean, obviously I know it's intentional, but like it's basically like her inner thoughts, and then she like corrects it. We all have inner thoughts. There's really no reason to go ahead and like cross them out. It just seems kind of fucking stupid, and it doesn't really serve any purpose for the narrative. It's not effective as like a plot device. I just don't understand it. I don't know if they're trying to show that she's unstable or she doesn't know how to think because she's been alone for so long. I don't really know, but it's just giving me like weird vibes, and I don't like it. Anyway, I really want to DNF this, but I kind of want to like read it because a lot of people say the second book in the series gets so much better, but I just don't think I'm really invested at all in these characters, number one, and I'm not invested in this story. It just seems like a really weird knockoff X-Men that isn't being explained, and there's no world building to like back that up. Like, I just don't really understand the point of this so far. I also don't understand what the fucking title's about, Shatter Me. I don't know. I hate this main character too. I think that's the problem, is I hate her and her thought process, because also we're seeing through her eyes, so like these metaphors and similes that are like so ridiculous are just killing me. And I think I'll probably just read more just so I can like write down some more terrible things. But also, if you go look on the reviews on Goodreads, you can find so many of them, and it just, the examples are atrocious. Like, I have no idea how this even got past editing, because they're terrible. And I don't know if that's just trying to be like how she feels about things, because she has a really weird way of thinking or something, but she doesn't have like a mind power, so why would she like think differently? I don't know. I feel like that's never really explained, even though obviously in the author's note, like, we know that was intentional, but like the actual reasoning behind it doesn't seem to be there. And the problem is, I kind of don't care enough to like look it up. Like, I really want to like look it up in a sense and see like in an author's interview like what she really said, but at the same time I kind of don't give a fuck. So I'll update you when I get to one of these, but I don't know which one it's going to be yet, because I might return this to the library tomorrow. I'm also going to try to renew it to see if I can renew it, but I have no idea if this is on hold or something. If not, I have the audiobook. Again, I just don't really care enough to like try anymore. Like, it really bored me after like the 30% mark, and it kind of actually got going. I think a big part of that, by the way, was there was a scene that reminded me so much of the Hunger Games scene in the train, where Katniss was like looking at the excess of food, and she was like disgusted because she came from a place where there was like no food, and she had like the exact same kind of experience in a dining hall, and it was almost like, it just felt so forced and so similar to the Hunger Game experience. Like, it was just so frustrating. I just feel like this book is trying to put so many different like dystopian tropes together in hopes to get us to like want to read it, but I just couldn't give less of a shit. Maybe this just like, I read this way too late for like my dystopian phase of a teenager, where I would have probably loved more of this shit. But I mean, I read YA dystopian all the time, and I still enjoy it, so it could just be the book is bad. We'll see. Just for some context, the house like 2 doors down from us, behind us, is throwing a wedding, and apparently everybody is doing karaoke. It is honestly like the worst thing I've ever heard in my life, and it is so loud. We're inside our house on our fucking couch. It's been a few days, and I do have some updates. Some good, some not so good. I did end up renewing Shatter Me through the library so I could actually hold this instead of having to edit in a picture every single fucking time, but I did decide to DNF this book, like 4% after I originally talked to you. In the nicest way I can put this book absolutely sucks. Like, I really don't understand how anybody likes this book just because the prose is so bad, dude. I have some examples for you, and they're terrible. If you want to see more, go ahead and check out my review. I'll put down as many as I can. But I did realize something. So my audiobook version and the book version are different. The audiobook version was obviously one of the older versions of the book before they edited some of the terrible quotes. But some of them ended up making it in. So here on page 6, she said, "I'm wearing dead cotton on my limbs and a blush of roses on my face." Another one on 68, "I am a being comprised of letters, a character created by sentences, and a figment of imagination formed through fiction." I'm also going to offer up this entire chapter page where she literally just keeps writing over, "I am not insane." Relevance, please? Oh, and at the bottom of that page, it says, "Horror rips my eyelids open." Another one is, "I am a raindrop." Here's the one that I figured out was obviously changed because in the audiobook version, it says, "Warner thinks Adam is a cardboard cutout of vanilla regurgitations." Okay. Here in the book, it says Warner thinks Adam is a cardboard cutout, and it just stops there. So that's how I figured out why I couldn't find some of the quotes I had heard in the book and I was having a hard time finding them is because they've changed some of them. Because they were obviously so fucking terrible. But yeah, left all the problem is this whole book is full of this garbage, so there's like no way to avoid it. But the thing that also just really stopped me here on page 166, and I stopped reading right after this point, I was like, I'm done. This is her thought. She says, "My throat is a reptile covered in scales." What the fuck does that fucking mean, dude? I just don't understand. I don't understand. I just really don't. There was also another quote that I'll put in my review about her like wanting to sew the carpet up to her body to cover herself, but it was just, I have nothing nice to say about this book. I really don't, unfortunately. I'm giving it 1 star. I'm DNFing it. I don't know how these things get published. And you know what's so funny is you always write something, you're like, oh my God, like who would publish this? This is garbage. And then I see shit like this get published. And then I think maybe I'm not so bad after all. But I actually had the highest hopes for this one. So I'm pretty disappointed because I love like weird dystopian fiction and I knew there was a love triangle. So I was excited for that, but I hate every single character in this and I hate the writing so bad. In fact, there's no world building in this. Just solidify the fact that I can't even get through like the bad similes and metaphors because there's nothing there's nothing there. Like there's nothing like that's pulling me through this book. So I DNF'd it. I'm done. Thank you so much. On a happier note, yesterday I finished Girls with Sharp Sticks, and I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars, round up to 4. I actually really enjoyed this, and I can't give away too much because you're gonna find out what it is anyway. I think like a good 20% in, like you know pretty much what's going on behind the scenes. You're just kind of waiting for it to unfold, and that's kind of my only complaint is that this is a little bit slow up until like the 80% mark. I mean, it's not like glacially slow. It's just a little bit slow, and then at the end it's like breakneck pace, which was interesting, and it really gave like the book the push it needed, and we kind of find everything out at the end. But I kind of wish things were revealed a little bit slower over time because I really liked the reveals and I liked knowing, even though I knew where it was kind of going, I liked finding out what happened. I liked getting there. And this ends off on like a cliffhanger of basically someone who's gonna like kind of be in charge now, and I'm really curious to see how that's gonna work out. So I don't want to spoil it for you, and my review is pretty short as well, but like I really enjoyed this. I would definitely continue on in the series. This definitely has Stepford Wives vibes, and that rhymes. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, I would definitely recommend this. It's definitely like dystopian in the fact that like the world is not what they think it is. It's kind of like Westworld meets The Handmaid's Tale, perhaps. I feel like that's a nice way to describe this, but it's really interesting and I want to know like more. Like I think it's how you know that the world building is good, though, is that you want to know more about the world and you want to know how it works. I want to know what happens. I want to know how things kind of like take place. I also kind of know how we got here, but I also really want to know what's going to happen in the future because a lot of things change at the end, like a lot of power exchanges. So I'm really curious to see how that's going to turn out. But this was a really good 4-star read. I really enjoyed this. I don't know if I'm going to like pick up the sequels right away, but I'm definitely looking forward to them eventually. And now for the last book in this reading vlog, which is Want. And this book, I think this is probably my favorite book out of this entire reading vlog, which I wasn't expecting. I think it was actually the one I was thinking I wasn't gonna like the most. Not that I wasn't gonna like any of them, right? But I really thought this one was gonna be probably my least favorite. It'd be like a 3-star or something. But wow, I'm 20% of the way into this so far, so I'm not very far in, but I'm really enjoying the vibes of this book. It's really giving me the vibes of another book I read last year called City of Shattered Light, which is the first of a series, and the rest of the series hasn't come out yet. It's coming out like next year. So like that was just the beginning of it, but I really enjoyed that book last year. I gave it 5 stars, and this is really giving me those vibes. I knew I was kind of feeling like in the mood for YA dystopian, but like I didn't realize how much I was craving a sci-fi, and maybe that's just like scratching that sci-fi itch, but like I'm loving this like sci-fi dystopian world where like only the rich get to wear like these spacesuits full of air and like communications and all these things, and like the poor people can't afford it. Like 95% of the world can't afford this shit. We're following Jason Zhao, and we kind of go back in these timelines to find out a little bit what's going on. So he basically kidnaps a really rich girl and ransoms her for money. He doesn't do anything to her. He just gets the money for her, erases her mind, and like sends her on her way. And they're basically trying to use this money to infiltrate one of like the biggest, like the spacesuit designers, because their whole plan is to destroy the spacesuit things that keep the rich people alive longer, because the air quality is so bad. Because here's a conspiracy, and I love this. They're kind of like, it's like definitely a found family thing, because Zhao lost his mom, you know, years ago, and I think it was definitely because of like this air quality problem. That's what it seems like. And he kind of has found family, has a bunch of friends, and he has a friend whose mom is a doctor, and she is murdered. And they think she was murdered. We don't know, but like it's kind of, the evidence is pointing to that bitch was murdered. And it's because the day before she had like a summit on like the air quality, and she's been pushing for regulations, and they're not like listening to her. And the next day she's murdered. And so him and his like ragtag group of friends decide to like infiltrate the people who create the spacesuit things. And then if they destroy the spacesuits, then then basically the whole world has to like decide what they're going to do to fix the air problem and like the pollution problem, because if even the rich people can't like breathe clean air, what are you gonna do? I really like the whole forcing of the hand of these rich people thing. I'm so down for this like trope, so I'm really excited to see if this is gonna go, but so far it fucking slaps. I also love that we're in Taipei, and it's like such a fun setting, and it's obviously futuristic and sci-fi, and like the world is making sense, but it's definitely different than ours, and it's really fun. And this is, again, is a great way to do world building. Shatter me. I have really high hopes for this one, so I'm just hoping that it continues to stay good, because so far I'm pretty invested in this, and I really like this world, and I really love the concept of like fucking over the rich people to finally fix climate change. Like I'm really digging that. So I'm gonna continue on with this bad boy. I'll probably listen to it a little bit more today, and hopefully I can give you guys an update probably tomorrow. We'll kind of see how I'm feeling, but I'm gonna try not to go through it too fast, but at the same time, like I'm really curious to see what's gonna happen. Whew, I'm out of breath. So anyway, I will talk to you guys when I finish one, which should hopefully be in the next day or so.
조용하게 음악을 틀어 이 노래가 혹시 너에게 방해가 될까봐 나는 조심하는 중이야. 될까봐 나는 조심하는 중이야. 내 어릴 적 꿈과 날 사랑한 사람, 수 없는 별 아래 그림 같은 섬. 하지만 이제 나 잠 못 드는 밤, 인생은 동화가 아니라는 맘만. 어디로 가야 하죠 아저씨, 난 자꾸 뒤를 돌아봐요 맥없이. 걸어온 길 위에 놓인 점들이 많아, 그린 화살표 설계된 나의 철로로 걸어. Oh no, 이 길에 머물 순 없어. 사랑했으네 나는 왜 없어. Boy that the past 고 미래에 너를 봐. 푸른 하늘 구름처럼 새롭게 피어나. 미래 소년이.
So I ended up finishing Want, and this book was exactly what I was looking for in a YA sci-fi dystopian. This definitely scratched that itch. It was really entertaining, and I would definitely look into the sequels, because this was just exactly what I was looking for at the time. I mean, we have like a plague, we have like chaotic good teenagers like out to get the bad guy and save the environment. It just worked for me. Something about this book just worked. These young teenagers are basically taking on the Jin Corporation because they make these giant super suits that help protect the really rich people from the toxic air. So they want to take down the suits and basically get back at the corporation, and it just kind of unfolds this like giant heist novel. And I will say some of the heist moments were a little unbelievable, which is probably my only big critique of this, but otherwise it was just a really fun time. It was usually pretty fast paced except for like a little bit in the middle, but I was enjoying it so much I didn't really mind, and I kind of wanted to see where it was going to go. But overall, this was just like such a fun time. This was the perfect YA dystopian. This was the one I was actually the most concerned that I would like, but actually turned out being my favorite in this reading vlog. I think my biggest complaint about Shatter Me is what this book did really well, which was the world building, which was incredible. It just, you could really also feel the inequality, you could feel the environmental issues, like everything just felt so real. But I think it's also because this is kind of like a future version of our world, which is a very like palpable thing that could happen. Like it's definitely like a probability that this could be our future. So I think that's kind of why this was also like better built as a world, because it already had like the frame of like our current worldview. And we already have issues with the wealth gap and like epidemics, and it really like felt real, especially because after COVID, like this book just kind of, I think, hit differently. So if you have a problem with plagues or epidemics or pandemics, I definitely would not recommend this, because that's definitely a big thing in here. But also just people dying from toxic fumes and environmental issues is definitely something that happens a lot in this book, and there's also a murder, so just keep that in mind. But basically, if you're looking for a really good YA sci-fi dystopian, I would look no further. This was definitely the best book out of the reading vlog, and it's definitely the one that I think about the most, and I'm definitely going to go ahead and pick up the sequels because they just sound really interesting. Even though this definitely fell into some of the YA tropes that are not my favorite, overall this was just a really good time. It's going to get 4 stars out of me, and this was a really fun, successful reading vlog, and I'm definitely going to look forward to reading some of the sequels from this, except for Shatter Me, which can die a very horrible death. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this fabulous reading vlog. And if you guys have any YA dystopians that you want to suggest down below, please let me know, because it's still one of my favorite genres and I really want to read more. So anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Talk to you guys next time.